Picture yourself standing in a clearing, and 30 feet away, a silverback gorilla rises up onto its knuckles and looks at you. 400 pounds of muscle, arms thicker than your whole body, and some deep animal part of you understands instantly that if it decided to close that distance, there would be absolutely nothing you could do. So here's the obvious story. Ancient humans took one look at that, felt exactly what you just felt, and wisely left the gorillas alone. Too big, too strong. Case closed, except that story is wrong. And the way it's wrong is a lot stranger than the story itself. Because your ancestors were not cowards. These were people who walked up to woolly mammoths, 6 tons of animal with tusks longer than a car, and killed them with sharpened sticks. They hunted cave bears. They speared animals that could, and did, kill them. Strength alone never once stopped a human being from hunting something. So the real question isn't why we were scared of gorillas. We hunted scarier. The real question is why, out of every large animal on Earth, this one particular creature got a pass. Why our species looked at 400 pounds of meat standing right there and made a decision that turns out to be one of the smartest our ancestors ever made. And the answer is going to change how you think about your own instincts. Let's start with the animals we did kill. Go back and look at what early humans were actually up against, and the idea that a gorilla was too much for us falls apart in seconds. Our ancestors shared the world with the cave bear, an animal that stood over 10 feet tall on its hind legs. We have their bones in our sights, cracked open for the marrow. We hunted the woolly rhino, 2 tons of armor and horn. We brought down mammoths, the single largest land animals a human has ever faced, and we did it so well that many researchers think we helped wipe them off the planet entirely. These weren't safe kills. People died doing this. But we kept doing it, generation after generation, because the math worked. One mammoth fed a whole group for weeks. Now hold a silverback gorilla up against that. 400 pounds. Dangerous, yes, but a fraction of the size of the things we were already killing. If our ancestors could organize a hunt that took down 6 tons of mammoth, a single ape in a forest is not the thing that stops them. So we can throw out the easy answer right now. It was never about strength. We had strength beaten. We outthought animals 10 times a gorilla's size, which leaves a genuine mystery. If we weren't too weak and we weren't too scared, then something else kept us and the gorillas apart for millions of years. And the first piece of it is the simplest and the easiest to miss. For almost all of human history, we never even met them. Here's a fact that sounds too simple to matter until you realize it's half the answer. You can only hunt what you actually run into. And a human being and a gorilla, for the overwhelming majority of our shared history, lived in 2 completely different worlds. Roll the clock back about 10 million years to the last ancestor we shared with gorillas. From that split, the 2 lineages walked in opposite directions, and I mean that almost literally. The gorillas stayed in the deep, wet, tangled equatorial rainforest of Central Africa. Dense, dripping, green in every direction, where you can't see more than a few feet. Our line went the other way. We came down out of the trees and out into the open, the savannas and grasslands and scrubby mosaic of East Africa. Wide horizons, long sight lines, room to move. And we didn't just visit that open country. We were built by it. Everything that makes a human body, standing upright, those long legs, the way we sweat instead of pant, all of it is the signature of an animal shaped for open ground, not closed forest. So for millions of years, a hunting human and a wild gorilla almost never occupied the same place at the same time. We weren't avoiding each other. We were simply somewhere else. The rainforest for early humans wasn't a hunting ground. It was a wall, a hot, blind, hostile place our ancestors mostly stayed out of. And that's the setup for the next piece. Because on the rare occasion a human did step into that green world, they discovered something brutal. Every single tool that made us the most dangerous predator on the open plains, every one of them, stopped working the moment the trees closed in. To understand why, you have to understand how a human actually kills something bigger than itself. And it's one of the strangest hunting strategies in all of nature. In 2004, 2 scientists, Dennis Bramble and Daniel Lieberman, laid out the evidence in the journal Nature, and the picture they drew is almost unbelievable. We are, they argued, one of the greatest endurance runners on the planet. Not fast, a gorilla, a deer, almost anything beats us in a sprint. But over distance, in the heat, we are nearly unstoppable. It's a technique called persistence hunting. You don't outrun the animal, you outlast it. You pick a target and you follow it at a steady jog for hours under the blazing sun. The animal sprints away, then has to stop and cool down because it can only pant. But you don't stop. You sweat across your whole bare skin. So you keep moving while it overheats. You walk it into heat stroke. You chase a thing to death without ever landing a blow until it simply collapses, and you stroll up and finish it. That is the human superpower. Long legs, bare skin, the ability to carry water, and a mind that can track a target across miles of open ground. Now take that superpower into the rainforest and watch every part of it die. There is no distance to run. The trees stop you in 10 feet. There's no open ground to track across. There's no relentless sun to cook your prey. It's shade and wet. You can't even see the animal you're chasing. In the forest, the endurance hunter is just a slow, sweaty primate who has lost every advantage it owns. We didn't fail to hunt gorillas because gorillas were too strong. We failed because, in their world, our entire way of killing simply switched off. And if you were foolish enough to try anyway, the forest handed the gorilla the one thing it needed to end you: close range. Out on the plains, a human kills from a distance. That's the whole trick. A thrown spear, a group closing in from several sides, an animal already half dead from a long chase. We almost never had to stand toe-to-toe with something and trade blows. We were too smart and too fragile for that. But the rainforest erases distance. In that dense green, you don't see a gorilla at 50 yards and plan your approach. You come around a wall of leaves and it's right there, a few feet away. And at a few feet, everything that keeps a human alive is gone. So look honestly at what you'd be standing in front of. A silverback's bite has been measured at over 1,300 pounds per square inch, nearly twice the force of a lion's, driving 2-inch canines built to slice. Its arms are built for tearing apart tree trunks to get at the pith inside. Estimates of its raw strength run to several times that of a grown man. This is not an animal you wrestle. This is an animal that, at arm's length, ends the fight in one motion. And a cornered silverback does not run. A male gorilla's whole job, biologically, is to stand his ground and protect his group. Charge him, corner him, threaten his family, and he comes forward, not back. So here's the trap the forest sets. The only place you can hunt a gorilla is the one place you can't win, up close, in the dark green, at the exact range where 400 pounds of muscle beats every clever thing a human has ever invented. On the plains, we pick the terms of every fight. In the forest, the gorilla picks them, and his terms are lethal. But even that isn't the deepest reason, because our ancestors weren't just weighing whether they could win, they were weighing whether it was worth it at all. And that calculation is where this stops being about gorillas and starts being about you. Every animal that hunts is, whether it knows it or not, an accountant. Scientists who study this style even have a name for the ledger it keeps. They call it optimal foraging theory, and it's a simple, cold idea. A smart predator doesn't chase whatever's biggest or scariest or most impressive. It chases whatever gives back the most calories for the least cost and the least risk. Every hunt has a price tag: the energy you burn, the time you spend, and the very real chance you get hurt or killed. And every hunt has a payout: the food you get if it works. A predator that survives is one that keeps picking the hunts where the payout beats the price. Do that math wrong too many times, and you don't get to be somebody's ancestor. So run a gorilla through that ledger, the way evolution ran it through ours. The cost side is a nightmare. You have to enter the forest where all your tools fail. You have to get within a few feet where you can die. You're facing an animal that fights back hard and won't flee. The risk of injury or death is sky high, and the payout, genuinely mediocre. A gorilla is mostly muscle and gut, lean, tough meat, built on a diet of leaves. Pound for pound, it's a poor return next to the fat, rich bounty of a large grazing animal out on the plains, which you could take at a distance, in your own world, on your own terms. So the ledger comes back screaming the same answer every time for millions of years. Maximum risk, modest reward. Don't. A human who ignored that math and went ape hunting in the jungle was far more likely to die young and childless than one who shrugged and went back to the grassland. Evolution didn't have to teach us to fear gorillas. It just quietly deleted everyone who thought they were worth the trouble. And yet, even for the few who beat the odds, who somehow killed one and dragged it home, the forest had one last trap waiting. And this one you couldn't see coming at all. There's a hidden danger in eating an animal, and it has nothing to do with how hard the animal is to kill. It's about how closely related to you it is. Here's the rule, and modern medicine has paid for it in blood to learn it. A disease, a virus, a parasite, is fine-tuned to live inside one kind of body. The more different that body is from yours, the harder it is for its diseases to jump the gap and infect you. But the closer that animal is to you biologically, the easier its infections cross over. Same machinery, same locks, same keys. and there is almost nothing on Earth more closely related to you than a great ape. Gorillas share the overwhelming majority of your DNA, which means a gorilla isn't just a hard, low-reward animal to hunt. It's a loaded reservoir of diseases that are pre-adapted to thrive in a body almost exactly like yours. We are not guessing about this. Some of the most feared illnesses in the modern world came to us straight out of great apes. Ebola tears through wild gorilla populations, and again, the human outbreaks start with someone who handled or butchered an infected ape. HIV, the virus behind a plague that has killed tens of millions of people, crossed into humans from the blood of primates. Butchering a great ape is one of the most efficient ways known to move a deadly disease from an animal into a person. Now, our ancestors didn't know about viruses, but evolution doesn't need you to understand a danger to protect you from it. The families who, for whatever reason, treated the forest apes as off-limits, who found them repulsive or frightening or simply not food, those families got sick less and lived more. The instinct to leave our closest cousins alone was written into us by every ancestor who broke that rule and paid for it. Which brings all of it, the geography, the failed tools, the deadly range, the cold ledger, the hidden plague, down to a single simple truth about your ancestors. And it's the exact opposite of the story we started with. We began with the picture of a human backing away from a gorilla out of fear. Now you can see that fear was never the point. Walking away from that gorilla wasn't weakness. It was the single most intelligent thing our ancestors could possibly have done. Think about everything the decision required. The judgment to know that some fights aren't worth winning. The restraint to look at 400 pounds of meat standing right there and calculate that the cost was too high. And then, actually, walk away. Every other predator on Earth is largely a slave to the chase. We are the animal that learned to do the math first and decline. That is the real human superpower, not the spear, not the fire. The ability to look at a challenge we might even survive and coldly decide it isn't worth the price. And here's the part that should stay with you, because that machinery never switched off. It's running in you right now. It's there in the flash of restraint that stops you squaring up to the aggressive stranger, even when some part of you is sure you'd win. It's there when you back out of the argument you could probably take, the deal that's a little too dangerous, the risk that's more ego than reward. That quiet voice that says this one isn't worth it, walk away, is not cowardice. It is the oldest, sharpest edge our species ever developed. It is the exact same calculation that kept your ancestors out of that rainforest for 10 million years. Because every human who ever lived is descended, without exception, from the ones who knew which fights to skip. The reckless ones, the ones who had to prove it, the ones who charged into the green to wrestle something they didn't need. They mostly didn't make it back. You come from the careful ones, the ones who understood, deep in their bones, that the smartest move in the world is sometimes to look a thing you could fight dead in the eye and decide it simply isn't worth it.